I didn't know what I was doing. I was fighting the system, but I didn't know how to fight it. And in 1970, I went to London to discuss with all the left groups, and I got a job working in the parks, and I went around all the left groups. And at that time, Bernadette Devlin was a member of Parliament, and she was being harassed by people. So she had a spare room or apartment. I lived there when I was there, not personal in any way, but just in case that people harassed her. But through that also, and through just seeking them out, I had discussions with the SWP, the Militant, the SLL, a lot of different left groups. And I joined the Militant. Even though the Militant was the smallest of the groups, I joined the Militant because the Militant was able to explain to me how to relate to the workers' organisations. That was the decisive factor. The others just wrote them off. They said, just wrote them a waste of time. But I couldn't write them off as a waste of time. I had to deal with them. And so I came back and didn't join the Militant immediately, but I came back to Derry and eventually joined the Militant and moved down to Dublin, where I was the first member in the South and the first full-timer of the Militant in the South then. And first full-timer in Ireland then. I think there's a few reasons. I think that on the one hand, it's in your own interests. It's the real, if you don't get involved in trying to improve the world, then you begin to dry up. Your spirit atrophies. That's what I believe. I remember before I joined the Militant, and it's always stayed with me, is I had a fishing boat down in the Swilly, and I loved the ocean, and I used to go fishing. And I had a caravan on Inch Island, and I was making a lot of money, and I was having a really good time. And but the bogside blew up, and I had this when all these events were taking place that I have already described, and I had to decide what I was going to do. And I remember it was so clear to me that I had to be involved in the movement. If I didn't be involved in the movement, I would every day be reading about the poverty in Africa, the oppression in Northern Ireland, the vicious system that we lived under. And I would know that that was out there still. And I would know that there was something that I could do about it. And I would know I wasn't doing anything about it. And I would have to kill that knowledge. And I know how I would have killed the knowledge. Dope, alcohol. I would have had to drink myself to death, or some kind of destructive behaviour would have taken place. It's a very personal thing why I would keep struggling. I think it's my own interests. It keeps my spirit alive, my intellect. Like I read newspapers every day. I don't think I would read newspapers every day about what was happening in the world if I wasn't doing anything about it. But I was also sent to the US by the Militant to be their full-time organiser. And I built a group there. The Militant went bad, degenerated. They expelled me, drove me out. And the other reason I won't give up is I'm too stubborn to give up. They're not going to I won't let them do it. And I think that's a factor in the world as well, how we see ourselves. And I'm helping to build a little revolutionary group in America at the moment. It's tiny, but also I'm trying to build it in a way that's different from the past, that we learn the lessons from the past and the mistakes that we made in the past. So in spite of being 25 years a full-timer for the Militant, making mistakes within that, I also learned a lot. And the little group we're building now will not have those same mistakes built into it. I hope it won't anyway. I think we were far too unconditional about our perspectives. We argued for 25 years that Stalinism would never be replaced by capitalism. We thought that we didn't think that capitalism had the vitality that it has shown over the last 15, 20 years. It's taken this new technology and absorbed it in a way that Stalinism, the new technology, in my opinion, was a major factor in shattering Stalinism. On the other hand, capitalism has been able to absorb it. You have Chinese capitalism coming onto the world arena now. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we are going to have a 25-year upswing of world capitalism. I don't know if we're going to have a slump that starts tomorrow or it's already started. I don't know. I think that the main reason that we're not going to have a world upswing of 25 years with China creating a new home market and a new world market with Russia helping is because of global warming. I think that's the major problem that we have in the world today, which will be the financial press are now increasingly calling it the biggest failure of the market, which is they're being forced now to recognize it. But we were far too unconditional, and the organization was built on those basic ideas. Then when those ideas were negated by events, when capitalism went back into the Stalinist world, when the world economy in the 90s wasn't going too bad, in the early 2000s wasn't going too bad, then our organization was thrown into crisis. Ted and company left first because they weren't going to accept that anything was wrong. Then those of us were left, the majority began to blame Ted for everything. And then they said, well, we never made any mistakes anyway. 20 years ago I thought this might happen, but I didn't tell anybody, just lies. And we were expelled, the little group in the US were expelled because we would not allow that to be brushed under the carpet. I was on the IS at the time. I couldn't even get on the agenda, the collapse of the British section. I couldn't even get on the agenda. Why did we make these mistakes? So I think my lessons, the lessons I would draw from that period, and I don't really know how to do, I don't really know how to do what I believe has to be done, is we have to build an organization which has within it room for debate, discussion, ideas to be struggled over. But then there has to be some principles that it fights for as well. And like I've went back and read some of the Bolshevik material before the Civil War destroyed the Bolsheviks in terms of its internal life. It was all full of debate, argument, pamphlets were being produced in all directions, the ideas were being given out publicly. In terms of Islamic fundamentalism, I think that is a problem. American imperialism is creating it stronger and stronger. But then on the other hand, look at what's happening in China. The biggest working class in the world is being created there at enormous speed. And the struggles are tremendous that are taking place. And you have to read the really serious bourgeois press to read them. And, I read that last Chinese New Year, 480 million Chinese went home for holidays from the cities. Now, if you think about that, so 480 million went home for holidays. So in the last, 20, 30 years, 480 million people moved to the cities. Also, what kind of an infrastructure? I read in 2001, half the world's building cranes were in one city in the world, in Shanghai. So you have a gigantic working class developing in China. You have the working class getting strengthened in India. They will have to deal with wages, jobs and conditions. I think that's what they're going to look to. Now the Chinese elite are very clever, I think. They have $1 trillion in reserves, and they're going to give them out, I think, when there's a big movement from below. Also they'll give some of them out to create the home market, to make them stronger. So they're very clever, and I agree with that, but I agree the workers won't go necessarily to socialism, but I don't think it's all. I think they confront the big corporations, and I think they're going to be, as they do confront the big corporations, the ideas that correspond to their needs as they confront the big corporations are going to begin to develop again. Look at Latin America. Latin America's tremendous radical movements.